trying to figure out ultimately what is.
It's still a mystery as to why it took them. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Primetime Crime Live this morning with your coffee or maybe your lunch. I think, Sheila, you're in Scotland, so you might be having lunch. I'm having an iced coffee. Jarrett, where's your coffee?
It's right here. Good morning.
Is that your, how many have you had? This is my second.
This is number 2. I usually have them before the gym.
Okay, so we're the same. Okay, so side note, and by the way, I didn't introduce myself. Most of you know us. I'm Lauren Conlon, Jarrett Ferrantino. You're not supposed to drink coffee or caffeinate yourself until you've been awake for an hour. Apparently, scientists have studied this, and your brain needs time to adjust because if you depend on that caffeine, you crash earlier and then you have trouble sleeping because you take more caffeine. Did you know this?
I've read that, but I usually last about 5 minutes. Once I'm up, like I get up really early, like 4:30 in the morning, and then I go downstairs. Nobody's around. The first thing I do is have a coffee before I run. I should wait though.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard. And sometimes waiting for it to brew feels like you're waiting. Like it feels like you've waited long enough.
That's the time allotted for the no caffeine.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Taryn, this is interesting. A bottle of room temperature water. What does that do? I hear like the lemon water, but what does the room temperature water do? That's kind of funny. So we got a lot to discuss today. There was an emergency hearing in Manhattan yesterday at federal court. And this is because, as most of you know, Diddy's cell was raided. There was a number of things being, thrown around in the media about what was found in his cell. So there were a lot of handwritten notes that we know were found, and Diddy's defense team is claiming it has a lot to do with the trial and his own defense. And prosecutors are saying, well, whoa, on these notes, we found stuff that would indicate that he paid off a witness, Kalenna Harper. And this is based on a number of things. So yesterday in court, Diddy had a bit of a legal victory when the federal judge said that he would not consider evidence obtained during the sweep of Diddy's jail cell at his upcoming bail hearing, which is tomorrow. So the judge also ruled that the prosecution will need to destroy its copies of the 19 pages of notes obtained during the sweep. This is pretty wild to me. I mean, Jarrett, listen, I get it. I feel like this is tough, right? Diddy did need some kind of a win, and the judge, I feel like if the judge sided with prosecutors on this, the judge would look a bit biased. I don't know, and I think you can speak to this better. But
I've been in this situation before, and judges hate it. I've been in a situation where we've gained access to information that could have been considered attorney-client privilege in a search. So here's a couple of things that the prosecution were arguing. Number one, Diddy was not the target of this search. This was a search that was pre-planned institutional-wide in the Metropolitan Detention Center. Yeah. So that's number one. So when you're looking at whether or not Diddy's rights were violated, you have to look at the intent of the searcher, okay? This was an institutional-wide search that ultimately led to the search of all of the cells. And in searching Diddy's cell, they find what's been reported 19 or 20 pages of handwritten notes that were photographed. And his attorneys say, number one, those notes contain highly important discussions and notes Diddy took both during and for upcoming meetings with his attorney, Mark Anfilio. So things like witnesses' names, inspirational quotes were in there, things like strategy for the case. This is a huge problem if the judge finds that the prosecution violated the attorney-client privilege. Now, I don't know if it's a huge victory for Diddy, other than to say The judge was not happy. This pisses judges off when you have this kind of conduct. Here's the thing. It was not investigators that arrested Diddy. This was a Bureau of Prisoners investigation. This Bureau of Prisons investigation. This was not the very detectives and agents that investigated Diddy. However,
so Jarrett, that it's been reported different ways. That's what I'm confused about. It says, oh, the feds raided his cell. And then it said, no, it was MDC that raided the cell. And isn't that?
Well, they would be considered feds because they work for the federal prison system. So it was not a targeted Diddy raid. All right. Now, that doesn't exonerate them. Because that's the case, it doesn't mean they get carte blanche to violate his attorney-client privilege. Then the actual U.S. Attorney's Office and the investigators investigating and that have charged Diddy come into possession of copies of these notes. Okay. This is the issue. They are now saying those notes, coupled with recorded phone calls, which we'll get to, suggest that Diddy is engaging in what they call a relentless, and I wrote this down. I always make notes and then I don't check them. Relentless efforts to contact potential witnesses and victims. So the phone calls are one thing. We'll talk about them in a minute. The handwritten notes are another. Okay. Whether or not you like P. Diddy, whether or not you think he did this, whether or not the freak offs turn your stomach, he has the right to an attorney. He has a right to this protected relationship that he can converse with them. He can exchange notes with them. He can prepare for trial and meet with them regularly without the prying eyes and ears of the prosecution.
Right.
When that the sanctimony of that relationship is broken, you got big problems, prosecution. Here's another thing that happened. When they came into possession of these notes, they instituted what's called under the law a taint team, okay? Not everybody's favorite word, or a Chinese wall. It's put up, they call it, between the prosecution and an independent third party that looks at this information and then says, hey, this stuff is privileged. This isn't going to the prosecution team. That's to protect them from viewing those materials. Okay. I've had cases where that type of mechanism has been put in place. It sounds like that team already reviewed this information and provided it to the prosecution. Despite that, the judge ordered it destroyed.
Yeah. So, it says in one of the reports that I read, it said that everything that Diddy wrote down and everything that was taken was lists, and it was everything that they discussed during their meetings. And I don't know. He says that basically it was the assistant U.S. attorney said that they argued that nothing was being violated, which I found to be really shocking. I was
so it was titled Things to Do. That was what the U.S. attorney said. And he's saying nothing. So there are things that have the classic markings of attorney-client privileged information. First of all, if it's a correspondence with your attorney, if it's discussion about the case in particular, if it's strategy, he's saying there's nothing that had the classic hallmarks of attorney-client privileged communication.
Yeah.
Diddy's lawyer is saying, wait, this is a to-do list that he and I review in our strategy meeting. So quite honestly, the judge has to err on the safety side and say, Mark and Filio, I'm siding with you. You know what this document is. The U.S. attorney may not be in a position to assess exactly what that is. So,
well, the U.S. attorney, I just found it. The U.S. attorney said it was birthdays and inspirational quotes. Not to be a conspiracy theorist, Jarrett, but do you think that Agnifilo maybe mentioned to Diddy that when he's taking these notes or whatever, that he should title it certain things? Because if there is, come on, I just have a hard time thinking that Agnifilo didn't warn Diddy that you're in federal jail. They can check your cell at any time and take whatever they want. Wouldn't he give him a warning? this stuff can be taken. And if it is, you need to make sure that you title it something legal or something about the case, even if it's not.
Yes, but I think what happens is, so I'm sure they've had that conversation, okay?
Yeah.
And it is important that prisoners have that right to keep those kinds of notes. For example, like your prison file, your file, your legal case file is usually kept separate from your other materials and things of that nature. So anybody who searches is put on notice. These are materials that are not subject to seizure. It did not have those classic markings. It literally said to-do list and then, or things to do. And then I did read where it said there were birthday dates, inspirational quotes, but it was 19 pages. And Diddy's attorney, how do you say it? And
Agnifilo. Yeah.
What is it?
Agnifilo.
Okay, so Agnifilo says beyond that, there are attorney-client privilege materials in it. Yeah. The judge says his position carried the day. The prosecution had to destroy those materials. Now, this fight ain't over. I bet you're going to get a motion to dismiss all charges based on this search. Whoa. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's a sledge approach to the relief that's expected or even reasonable here. But I can bet that motion is coming.
Wow, that's insane. That is so ridiculous. And look, I don't think this is such a setback for the prosecution. I really don't. I think it's interesting that he is trying for bail again. You can't blame him. He has nothing better to do, right? Do you see him getting bail on Friday? They cannot include the quote unquote witness intimidation. But they can include maybe the fact that he's trying to influence the jury through his friends and family, creating these narratives to make people feel bad for him or whatever he's trying to do, trying to be relatable. Do you think something like that could heavily influence the judge on deciding bail yet again?
So his ruling wasn't clear as to what they can consider witness intimidation. Anything gleaned from the notes, they can't consider. But the U.S. attorney is suggesting that there were recorded phone calls made through means of Diddy using that PAC phone system of other inmates' numbers. Yes. Now, you'll read about that. Why would somebody want to do that? So every inmate is assigned a number. And when they make a phone call out of federal prison, they input that number. So the recording system then triggers, here are all the calls that Diddy made. So if someone, now there are a lot of calls coming out of that facility. If someone is looking to monitor, which I can guarantee you they are, monitoring Diddy's calls, how does he usurp that process? He uses another inmate's number. Okay. Right. Now, they could figure that out. I've had that happen too. And the second thing is he's using an app called Contact Me ASAP to somehow they're using that to contact third parties on these phone calls, which is a huge no-no and a violation of policy. If these calls are recorded and he's engaging in efforts to intimidate witnesses or is instructing his children or associates to do so, that is a huge problem. Yeah. There is one thing, nothing good. I have said since the day you and I talked when Diddy was arrested, never see the outside of a jail cell if he's ultimately convicted, including pretrial. Yeah. Here's the ultimate mortal sin as a defendant is, number one, to recidivist, commit the crime while you're out. Or intimidate witnesses. If he is trying to intimidate witnesses, as is being suggested, he will never get out. Because if he can do it from there, imagine there are no safeguards that you can put on this man. He's doing it from behind bars. Even if you put an ankle, even if you put an agent in his house, anything of these $50 million, you cannot guarantee that he's not going to attempt to utilize his massive wealth, his massive network to intimidate these witnesses. That's a problem.
I totally agree. And this is crazy. MJ, there's no way. Brace ourselves for a Diddy pardon. Hell no. I feel like he wants to take down Hollywood and the music industry. And the only thing I'll say about that is Diddy has an associate. I don't know. I think I brought this up on my live with Jack Fox. His name, Jared, have you heard of him? His name is Jimmy the Henchman, James Rosamond. And
no.
he's
I know guys with those kind of nicknames, though. That's
well, this is actually not, this is not what you think. This is not an Italian guy from Brooklyn. So he was the former CEO of Czar Entertainment, and he's doing a life sentence right now for drug trafficking and also for a hit. He orchestrated a murder, and well, I shouldn't say allegedly, but he's denied his involvement here. But anyway, James Rosamond, or Jimmy the Henchman, was said to be working with Diddy in 1994 and knew about the shooting at the Quad with Tupac. He allegedly helped orchestrate this, told Diddy and Biggie that this was happening, along with another guy named James Sabatino, who's actually a Genovese or a Gambino crime family member who's also serving a life sentence. So in 2021, Jimmy the Henchman claimed that Trump gave him a pardon. Crazy. And that didn't turn out to be true. It never happened, I guess. And there was a whole appeal about it. But I'm still super confused and unclear. He said he had a conversation with Trump, and Trump's like, yeah, this is crazy. And then nothing happened. So I'm kind of like, I don't think he's really looking to pardon.
President Trump says an awful lot. If he said those things to Jimmy the Henchman, he did not follow through. Before we even get beyond what could happen and ultimately what happens with Diddy, right now, we're not even talking about whether or not he's guilty. I feel very strongly about the charges, and every past day, almost every hour since then, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Another piece of information, none of it good, about Diddy and the life he was living has come out. So it's been nothing but bad news against Diddy since the day this indictment dropped.
Yeah.
That is causing me to see him in a very bad light, obviously, and more likely than not guilty of the crimes he's charged. What I don't understand, this whole thing about Diddy orchestrated from behind bars to have his kids sing happy 55th birthday to him, and then was hoping that the video got posted to inspire, to prejudice any prospective jury, to make them have sympathy for him. I'm going to tell you something. That, to me, defenses oftentimes have marketing teams and PR people. Like, I don't see that as the kind of thing that's going to result in him not getting bail. It's near as egregious as intimidating witnesses or victims. That is a bigger problem. And quite honestly, maybe another crime. So I don't know why they're making such a big deal of that. And somebody may say, oh, Jared, he can't try to prejudice the jury pool. Listen, video of him being sung happy birthday to ain't going to change the deluge of articles and information that has come out in the major press conferences. Did you see the lawyer now getting sued from Texas that Bisbee is getting sued?
Busby. I have a question about that after, but I think it's a little more than just the birthday call. Like, that's a part of it, but he is sort of instructing his kids in keeping his social media up, doing the whole, put your youngest, cutest daughter, say this, say that. And he's doing so in other ways as well, allegedly, through his family and maybe some friends. And I think that is I don't know. I mean, you're right. Defense teams have strategies, but you're not really, you can't create narratives and tell people what to do from behind bars, because I feel like the line is so thin there. I mean, am I right? I
just think it's a little apart from the intimidation, which everybody should be focused on.
Yes.
Those other things could be dealt with pretty easily. Okay. You say, look, Diddy, if you're not allowed to post anything, nothing directly or indirectly about the case. If you do, it's a violation of your bail. You're right into jail back. So like that, you can keep Diddy on, a short leash and monitor him. The bigger problem, like I said, there's nothing more egregious than upsetting the judicial process by threatening, intimidating, or witnesses, which is some of the words that are flying around out there.
Yeah, and I think at the state level, I know the state level, witness intimidation, a charge like that can carry an 8-year jail sentence. So I'm thinking federally, it's even more. So I'm sure prosecutors really want to add.
I'm going to tell you, the grading of those offenses typically go to, if you're facing a summary or misdemeanor charge and you try to intimidate the witnesses, chances are it's a misdemeanor intimidation. If you're intimidating witnesses in a case that's as serious as Diddy's, the consequences of that kind of intimidation are weighed against the actual case you're attempting to upset, and the consequences are severe. I mean, it's a huge problem.
So then let's
go. It sounds like they're being investigated for it, by the way.
Yes. But let's go to what you mentioned. There is a prominent man suing Tony Busby, claiming extortion. And this prominent man is there. He's using the law firm Quinn Emanuel. Quinn Emanuel is Alex Spiro's law firm. Spiro, most of us know him as he's currently representing Eric Adams in his federal case, and he got Alec Baldwin off on the involuntary manslaughter charge in New Mexico. He's great. Alex Spiro is currently representing Tupac's family, and he's tasked in making a connection between Diddy and Tupac's murder, basically. But Quinn Emanuel is representing this guy who's suing Tony. But it feels a little, I don't know. It just feels a little messy. How is that supposed to work in one firm when, one guy is supposed to be saying he's guilty of this, and then another guy is saying, well, I'm going to sue the guy that's saying that he's guilty of this, like it's strange.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, is there a conflict there? In one sense, you are trying to protect the rights of someone who's being shaken down by Busby's firm, right? So at the same time, the conduct that's being alleged is some connection to Diddy, and you have a tacit connection to the larger picture of Diddy with the Tupac people. So you have to look at the two different pleadings together and say, where's the conflict? Where do these clients part company? Or is this Tupac situation collateral to what this, let's say celebrity A is being blamed for being at a party at Diddy's house in 2012, for example, long after Tupac was killed, nothing to do with the Tupac situation, then sure, an attorney from that firm can pursue that claim. Yeah. The facts are well divorced from anything having to do with Tupac. But, there's a lot of lawyers out there. We try to avoid those types of conflicts. Obviously, these guys mixed up. Spiros' firm is mixed up in a lot of these high profile things. They take to these things. They do a really good job. So lawyers have to self-assess those type of conflicts. And no one is in a better position than Spiros and Quinn to make that determination. Look, we're talking about things that happened 20 years apart.
So you're saying it, like, I guess I just mean you're in the same office, let's say. I mean, there's multiple offices, but you're in the same office. This guy's got evidence that people are extorting Diddy. I mean, I guess it's like, how do you keep that from maybe another lawyer who's trying to prove Diddy's guilt and a bunch of things? I know, again, it's a different case. It just feels so strange. That's not.
It's close, but again, it comes down to what are the actual facts of the particular representation for each individual in those claims. I mean, I practice in a relatively medium-sized area, and oftentimes we run up against situations that are related. And it just really, you have to find a way to define the current thing. But like I said, I mean, what are the odds you're going to end up in a Diddy situation again? But it's really coming down to the scope of the representation.
Thinking of Tupac's family as well. Like if you were Tupac's family, you'd be like, wait, your firm is actually suing the firm that's actually trying to hold Diddy responsible. That doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, yeah.
But in no way. So here's the thing. I mean, in no way are they protecting Diddy. I mean, all their arrows could still be pointed at Diddy for the Tupac situation. And this celebrity could be like, I didn't have anything to do with this guy. I was never at his house.
Right. Well, just really quick, before we just kind of move on, I want to go over really fast, Jarrett, how many times Diddy has evaded the law. I jotted some things down because I think it's important for people to know that Diddy has exercised this power that he seems to have over the legal system, over the justice system. He's been flexing, let's just say, for decades, and I think this completely started in 1991 with the charity basketball game that was oversold, led to a stampede, and resulted in the deaths of 9 people and injuries to more than 24 other people. This is in New York City. And no criminal charges were filed. A state judge's decision found the college and Puffy and Heavy D liable for the tragedy. But nothing really came of that. There were personal lawsuits, wrongful death lawsuits, personal injury lawsuits, but he managed to settle all of them because that's what he does best, right? He settles and he's fine. But no criminal charges were brought there. And then you fast forward to 1995, his limousine driver, Cedric Bobby Lemon, said he was beaten by Combs's bodyguard hired to protect the singer Mary J. Blige. And in the lawsuit, this guy said that the guards punched and kicked the crap out of him backstage, and said Diddy didn't properly train his security. Not only that, he encouraged them to act like this and to use force and violence. And he basically sued him, and he actually won the suit, but Diddy, because Diddy never appeared in court, so he won automatically. And then in an appeals court, Diddy appealed it. Everything was overturned. So he never got any money. He never won. And Diddy seemed to manipulate the system yet again. And then in 99, we all know about Shine and about the nightclub shooting. Nothing ever happened with that. And it was insane because, I mean, Jennifer Lopez was not even called to the stand as a witness. Diddy completely tricked the system. Shine got 10 years. Diddy walked. And everybody saw Diddy that night with a gun. Everyone knew what happened, but everybody was scared. So then you've got that. And then you've got 2001. He was sued by Kim Porter for child support, and they managed to work that out. He of course settled. And then 2005, he settled with Random House. And you know, a lot of this stuff, like you could say, oh, he's a powerful man. This stuff happens, but it all just seems to happen in his favor, if you will. So it just seems to go away so fast. So he settled with Random House because he never completed a book on time, and they paid him a lot of money, and nothing happened with that. He made it go away. And then I mentioned Sabatino, the Gambino crime family guy. Well, in 2007, he sued Diddy for $19 million, saying that Diddy failed to pay him for a recording that he made of Biggie, and the suit was dismissed. So again, don't know what happened. His chef sued him for discrimination and for basically sexual harassment in the workplace. And they settled, and the terms were not publicly disclosed. He was, another bodyguard lawsuit, and he was never paid out after winning that suit. And then someone named Francesca Sparrow, a music executive, sued him for age discrimination. And he settled that very, very quietly. And then a nanny sued him for a wrongful termination because she was pregnant, settled that. And then we go to Cassie. So it's just like nothing ever seems to happen to him, ever.
In the 999 cases that have come since, like every day there's a new one. So, well, look, a lot of those cases, what you have to understand, Lauren, not that you have to understand, but in the legal system, have someone who is like, everybody looks at these folks and says they're famous, but you know, and I was pretty active in reporting on and documenting the Cosby case and knew the prosecutors. And fame is one thing. These individuals, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Diddy, not only are they famous, they're extremely powerful. Yeah. They are extremely wealthy. They are on boards. They control, like lawyers kiss their ass. Anybody, they're active politically, whatever side of the aisle, right? So you're dealing with a presence that is, in one sense, a gangster, a street gangster, and in the other sense, he's a powerful executive who's famous and has powerful friends. So in the realm of civil law, in those businesses, you're going to have those kind of suits. You're going to have people, when you fire them, who accuse you of certain things. That happens, okay? Right. I have clients, and most cases in the civil system resolve. Our system could not stand if every case went through full litigation. And you resolve cases for a lot of different reasons. Number one, it's cheaper, okay? If you're going to court and you're going to pay $200,000-$300,000 for a case that you can resolve for $50, you're going to resolve it, okay? So, and that's before we even get to the merits of it. So as far as Diddy being able to resolve civil claims against him, what I hear in that list is a lot of transactional type relationships, employment type relationships. Now, when you have people being beat up, okay, by your security detail for an environment that you've created, a little bit of a different situation. But again, it's in that civil realm. We're seeing a lot of those kind of cases now against Uber and Lyft and things of that nature, where you're in the civil realm for an assault type situation. A crime has been committed upon you, but you bring a civil claim as a result, even when the authorities don't act. So, in those cases too, you're going to resolve them rather than air your dirty laundry in public or incur the expenses associated with fighting it.
Yeah, and I recognize he's a powerful guy, and I feel like I didn't even gather all of them, but I just noticed that some of them were violent, some of them were settled very quickly, and some of them had to do with harassment and sexual harassment and his treatment. But this is all consistent with what we know now. So I think that says a lot. And I also want to add that there were 5 new lawsuits that were filed yesterday by Tony Busby. And it's this, I don't want to say the same old because that sounds disrespectful, but technically it is an allegation that she was drugged and coerced into performing oral sex on not only Diddy, but his bodyguard as well, outside a New York City nightclub in 2001. Another woman said at 17, she attended a 4th of July party in 2004 where she was assaulted by Combs, allegedly while she was unconscious. And
when did this guy work?
I know it's insane.
I mean, it sounds like that was all he was doing.
Yeah, right. I know. And so then there's several other individuals. These cases go back to about 2001, I think. And in these lawsuits, there are 3 males and 2 females. So I've got to get my hands on those lawsuits. But it's really hard to keep up.
Well, and these Busby lawsuits, it's paint by numbers. The complaints are all the same. It's like insert victim name here versus the same entities. So Diddy is he's in a tornado cyclone and he's never getting out of it. I mean, honestly, at this point, he's better off behind bars. Like all he's going to be doing is dealing with lawsuits. Like his life as he knows it is long over. We're done. That's done. Like your money. Look at what's going on with at some point, look at what's going on with Mayor Giuliani. I know, look at what's happening. Like items are being removed. He owes $100 million, right? Yeah. They took his prized possessions, a vehicle and rings. He still owes $100 million.
Yeah.
At some point, the reality of these situations, it comes home. And all of a sudden, you're just people, and he cannot go anywhere. He's not he's good everywhere he goes. He's just going to be served with a new lawsuit.
Yeah. No, you're right.
He knows it is over.
You're absolutely right. I totally agree. Totally agree. But you know what? I'm so sick of talking about Diddy. I don't think he deserves any more of our time. But you know who does? These 4 deserve our time. So Jarrett, let's talk about what's happening with Kohberger right now.
So we are in pre-trial litigation with the Kohberger case. For those of you that have been living under a rock for the past 2 years, that's the Idaho murder of these 4 beautiful young people, Kaylee, Zaina, Maddie, and Ethan. What is happening now is Kohberger's attorneys have filed a motion for a couple of things. Number one, they want to suppress the statements that Kohberger made when the Pennsylvania State Police busted into his house in Albrightsville, through the doors, through the windows, zip-tied him on the floor, held his family at gunpoint for the statements he may have made at that time. They did not get into the details of those statements. It was rumored he said, "Are you arresting anyone else?" That was one of the rumored statements.
Okay.
So they say during that particular raid, while in the home, he was not merchandised. Therefore, those statements should be suppressed. Bigger issue is they're also seeking to suppress all of the evidence gathered for all warrants that followed the IgG DNA match of Brian Kohberger, because they're saying this does not rise to the level of probable cause. The cell phone data is junk science too, and the touch DNA, IgG DNA, none of it gets you to Brian Kohberger. And the quote is, all subsequent evidence is fruit of the poisonous tree. If they were successful in this motion, they're right. All that evidence would fall. I don't believe they're going to be successful, by the way, but they have to ask, and you can't blame them for asking.
Okay. And as of right now, the trial is still set for the end of the summer. Is that correct?
Yes, August of 25.
August of 25.
In Boise.
And right. And how long do you anticipate this trial will last for?
Well, his Kohberger's attorneys have said this trial is going to last several months. The prosecution is saying they didn't expect it. And this was when they were arguing before Judge, and they were trying to set a date this past summer. Yeah. I would imagine it's going to be at least 3 or 4 months long.
Oh, really?
Yes, because here's the thing. Number one, I always feel like I'm counting and I never get to number 2. But number 1, it's a death penalty case. So in a death penalty case, you have to do individual voir dire and seat a jury. Seating a jury will take at least over a week in this particular case, maybe 2.
Right.
Then you have extensive evidence that has been collected that will be presented by the prosecution, which will take several weeks to put on. The defense is going on an exhaustive case based on what I could see coming. Their case will take as long, if not longer, than the prosecution's case. If he's convicted, then we go into the penalty phase as to whether or not death will be imposed. At a minimum, 3 months, maybe 4 or 5. And that's an ambitious trial schedule. I've done cases that are certainly not as big as the Kohberger case in its national scope, but certainly evidence-wise. And we've been able to kind of consolidate a lot of what had to be presented and had done them quicker than expected. But I don't anticipate that. Ann Taylor seems to have a real handle on her defense. That's Kohberger's attorney. And she is casting several weeks of a defense at least.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I know I'm moving quickly through this, but I want to, that was a great update. So thank you. But I do want to move on right now as Susan Smith, her parole hearing is happening right now. And there are, it's being televised. I'm going to just swap over really quick because there are some impact statements going on that we can kind of hear. David Smith apparently just walked in.
I feel justified.
So I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger for now.
Please be aware of the confirmed problem.
So at this point, I think anybody can say what they want. So I don't know who these people are. I'm trying to navigate a bunch of different streams. I might go to Gazella for a minute, but I want to see David Smith walking in.
To use the information that is maintained by the classification and inmate records division.
Okay, let me see if he's walking in at all. If I can find that anywhere else. Jared, do you want to tell the story of Susan Smith?
Well, Susan Smith, as I'm sure many of our listeners and viewers know, was the mother who took the life of her own 2 children. She drowned them in the 90s. Horrific case, showed little or no remorse, wanted to walk away from her life. So she is eligible for parole, which makes me feel old. But I could tell you this, I do not anticipate Miss Smith will be getting parole today. I think this process whereby people can come in and address these parole boards directly is very, very important. It's not that way in every state. It's that way in South Carolina. It is now that way in Pennsylvania, thanks to a case out of Luzerne County. This has made this process much more human and much more real. It used to be Susan Smith would come in and appear, and victims couldn't address them directly.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think this is, gosh, I think a lot of people were not clear, and I don't mean just people, but when she was sentenced to life, I don't think the jury fully understood that she would be eligible for parole after 30 years. Now I found that the law has changed, and so life means life. That means no parole. But yeah, I think
we call it LWOP.
What is it?
Life without parole, LWOP.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is definitely not sitting well with me that she even has this opportunity.
She's eligible after 30 years.
Right,
that was the law. Right. And now I was part of the Brittany Drexel case in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And Raymond Moody was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. So, and Raymond Moody is infirmed and older at this point. I don't know that he'd get to 30 years, but the law has changed down there.
Okay. Yeah, this is intense. Okay, so it's all saying, this is the parole board. It's saying that it's coming up, but it's funny because when I did speak to Tommy Pope, the lead prosecutor, he made an interesting point where he feels like she's not necessarily a threat to society, but he just feels like her, the punishment needs to fit the crime, and she needs to spend the rest of her life in prison, because that is also what the jury wanted. That is what, that's what her peers wanted. So yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. I do think she's a threat to society, because I think she's a manipulative woman that can manipulate pretty much anyone to do what she wants. So, is she going to have 2 other kids and drive them into a lake? Probably not. But she could do something else. I mean, she was sleeping with a bunch of guards. She was, getting paid for interviews, trying to make money and doing it in a sneaky way. It just seems like she hasn't really, changed her ways, I guess. I feel like that's not.
I think that she's committed to who she is. I think so. Yeah. And those antics in prison are something that's also going to be considered by that board. They're going to be like, listen, again, we talked about Lyle and Eric Menendez, who have been model prisoners. Susan has been unbelievable in prison, right? Like
terrible. Terrible. Awful. I mean, you're so right. Lyle and Eric, I mean, they've been, did you see that? This is just whatever side note, but Gascon filed like 600 pages of praise for them through the wardens and other inmates and people that work at the prison, all just saying how wonderful they are ahead of the December 11th hearing.
And now you see happening. The winds of political change have blown in. Gascon is out. Gavin Newsom is now waiting for the new DA to act before he acts. Although Newsom could just do what he needs to do here. He has the authority to grant clemency.
But he won't.
Right.
All of a sudden he cares
that
about. Isn't that funny? He said, I want to respect the voters' decision. Oh, now you do? That's interesting. That's funny. You don't necessarily.
We'll see. Time will tell. He's letting. I wonder what the plan is if the incoming DA does not takes an attack, then Gascon, which we anticipate he will. He's lock, stock, and barrel with Uncle Milton.
Yeah, I know. It's so strange. I'm so frustrated with that case because it's taken us on such a roller coaster. But I want to talk about this case, give an update really quick, because there's a hearing today, a status hearing, and there was some news dropped yesterday based on some filings by the state where they have a bunch of new witnesses. And two of the witnesses, which we predicted, are Paul Grice and Cora Twombly. So there we go. I mean, we kind of saw that coming. And I think if you guys follow me on X, you may have seen that there was some drama. I guess it kind of frightened some people very close to the case, as it looked like Paul Grice was out last week based on the Vine, which is the jail search lookup. It said he was out on recognizance from the Woodward jail he was at. And I called and they're like, yeah, he was released as of yesterday, but they couldn't give me any other information. So that was scary. I believe that there was some kind of medical issue, Jarrett. You said that can happen. I mean, I personally think somebody beat the crap out of him. And he needed to get some kind of protection.
It has to be an issue that is beyond the facility's ability to care for him. So it's either a diagnostic testing or some kind of assault that he needed treatment or something like that. I mean, the bottom line is what we had hoped for. This is a big moment. I mean, what we've hoped for, what we believed was happening, our educated and experienced opinion was Cora and Paul are on the the state's witness
list. I'm going to mute myself for 1 second. My kid's school is calling. I'll let you talk about this for 1 second. Okay.
Sure. I'm on my own. You got it. So basically everything we anticipated was that Cora and Paul will now be testifying for the state. And that has been confirmed in the latest filings. We've anticipated that based on the fact that Cora and Paul was removed from the prison that was holding the other co-defendants. That was a big step forward. And the fact that he has waived his preliminary hearing to a speedy trial, and Cora has done that as well. So those are the kind of things you would see for an individual that's going to be participating and testifying on behalf of the state against their co-defendants. So the Kansas Moms case continues to move forward. This hearing today, I am sure we'll get some more information on the status of discovery and what other things. We're good?
Yeah, sorry, I'm good. Yeah, sorry.
And the other thing is, so these status hearings are rare, and we said this last week. These status hearings are rare at this stage because we haven't even had a preliminary hearing yet. The status hearings in this case now, in large part, are about whether or not all the discovery's been exchanged, what's outstanding. But it looks like none of that is impacting the December preliminary hearing date.
Right. And I don't know if you went over this, the other witnesses that were listed.
I didn't.
Yeah, they were for some clarity, they were employees of Walmart, Tractor Supply, one other store, and then I believe it was like a cell phone company or something. So
those individuals, in order to authenticate, first of all, in order to authenticate video evidence or receipts, you would need what we call like a corporate designation to authenticate this document, which is why it's such a pain sometimes. It's like you get this poor person from Walmart who's got to come in and testify in a capital murder case. But unfortunately, we have this rigorous process to get these authenticated records in. So that's why those folks are being added.
Yeah. I feel a little bad for them because it is such a small town and their names are listed as witnesses. And I just feel like so many people in that area just don't feel safe. And you do have to kind of feel sorry for anybody who gets dragged into this.
And you could appreciate the apprehension folks like that have. I would tell people like, look, you're not you're not an eyewitness to murder. All you're saying is this a Walmart receipt? Yes. Was this the date and time? Yes. Nothing more to say. I mean, so of the people that Tad or Tiffany might want to go after, you're at the bottom of that. You're at the bottom of that
That's
list.
A really good point, actually. That's a really, really good point. So this is, I don't know. I believe that Veronica's autopsy will be held. They haven't made, or the judge hasn't made a ruling on that as of yet, but I'm sure that they're going to make a ruling on that today. Let me see. Oh yeah, Nutbards. They think they are on Ozark. It's true that you're so right about that. That has like Darlene vibes or something. Like I forgot about
absolutely.
Ozark. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that there will be some important filings either out today or tomorrow pertaining to this case. And yeah, it doesn't get easier. It's really awful because it's kind of just like, that Veronica's autopsy report, unfortunately, is going to be much worse than Jillian's because she was the actual target here. And it makes me feel anxious, I guess, to know that that's looming and that's coming. We're going to hear about it eventually. And I just can't imagine if that's how I feel and I'm not even, related to this case or I have no skin in the game here. How does her family feel? It's just, yeah.
Well, hopefully, I would say this. I hope that the D's brought them in and prepped them for that and said, look, this is what's going to come out.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
we almost I would do that because I don't know. I mean, one of the things I was committed to, and this isn't noble. Yes, there's a portion of it motivated by a desire to do right by victims, but at the same time, I didn't want to be blown up in the press either. So I would bring folks in and manage expectations, which is not happening in Koberger because Steve Gonsalves is still an outsider, going at Bill Thompson. If it's happening in Kansas Moms, those kind of meetings need to happen. You say, look, here's the autopsy report. Mm-hmm. It's not good. Here's what it says generally. You could have the right to look at it if you want to. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's going to come out. And that's the kind of thing look, I think you kind of take that anxiety and that looming anxiety you're feeling like as a mother and somebody who has reviewed this case as a human being. Imagine, them knowing I'm going to be reading about slashes and things of that nature to Veronica or Jillian. They should be brought in with the victims advocates and review limited or how in depth they want to get.
Do you think at the pretrial hearing they are going to show pictures?
I have in those types of proceedings. I would think they will.
Wow. Yeah.
So we start that with a big warning. I would stand up and say, Your Honor, at this point, and first of all, it adds to the drama of the situation.
Yeah, right.
When you're in front of the jury, they're like, oh shit, here comes some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But I would also say at this time, Your Honor, I am going to be displaying images of the deceased. There are members of their family here. I would invite anyone who believes they need to leave to take the next 30 seconds to do so. And then it's silent in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And then you hear feet shuffling, and then some people stay, some people go.
Yeah, that's
I couldn't
what scares me.
I could not imagine that.
Yeah. So so I guess the tough part is you've got the pretrial hearing that I'm assuming a handful of family will be there and they'll have to experience this, go through all of this. And then how long do you think until the real trial after the pretrial?
Oh, it's going to be a while. So
you think so?
It could be right because all of the pretrial litigation in Koberger, for example, has not happened yet in Kansas Moms. I mean, it doesn't even, we're ahead of the game in the discovery process, but once let's assume the preliminary hearing goes well, the charges are bound over. There will be a habeas filed for a reconsideration of that proceeding, asking a judge to say, hey, they have not met their burden. 30 days to file that, 30 days for the defense to respond, 30 days for that to be scheduled. Then all the discovery and the pretrial hearing motions get filed. We are looking at the end of 2025 for this trial or early 26.
So why is it that like Brendan Banfield and the Au Pair murders, he's arrested, in October or September, and his trial is 6 months later. I don't get that.
It's a case-by-case thing. I don't know. I think that, so Brendan's trial is scheduled for when?
February of 2025.
So you got to remember, so the Bears case was sitting for a while before she got there.
Right.
The circumstances have so changed in that case. I can predict Brendan's trial is going to be moved.
Oh, you mean push back?
Because
Juliana wouldn't like that because she's working, with time served here.
Juliana, because she's going to get out after she testifies.
Exactly.
That's her belief. I hope not. But so I think because this upends any defense, and it was a late development, that they will be granted a continuance. Remember, I mean, Juliana's been sitting in jail almost an entire year longer than Brendan was. So
right.
You had her case pending all that time. He gets wrapped up. This was the first trial date, I think, that was set. It's ambitious to think you'd get that done inside of that. It just takes forever. I mean, there were when I tell you there are a million. I have been in the courtroom ready to start murder trials. Boom, we're off for 4 months. And there's nothing worse than physically and mentally preparing to spend the next 4 weeks in trial to then get shown the door and go home and tell your wife and kids, oh, daddy's home for the next month and I have nothing on my calendar. Like, you don't know what to do with yourself.
That's so interesting. I never thought of it like that. Okay. Wow. Well, I guess, we can give an update maybe later this week on what happens today with the status hearing and any other paperwork that comes about or any new filings. But I think that I like going over all the other cases that we have been touching upon. I mean, unfortunately, there's no update on Nikki McCain, who is the missing mom out of California. We haven't done an episode on her because there's really nothing to share at this point, unfortunately. But again, if there is, we will jump back on and discuss that. Absolutely.
And we check in with Brian Fitzgibbons regularly. So
yes, we do. And also, like we just discussed, the au pair, Brendan Banfield, Christine Banfield, Joseph Ryan case. There's nothing really going on with that right now. But if there is, we will, of course, jump back on. But and if you have anything that you want us to cover, I know someone just mentioned Suzanne Morphew, Barry Morphew. Maybe we can do that one next week. I know there is some new movement, I believe. I haven't really been following that since, Barry was cleared of everything, which is so annoying. He's so disgusting. But so just drop us a note if you want to see anything covered. And don't forget to like and subscribe and whatever it is that people do on YouTube.
And share, because when I share, I do try to do the social media stuff. Like I'll share a picture of my little girl. I'll get like 400 likes, deservedly so. Then I'll share like the YouTube link for our show. It's got like 3 likes because nobody sees it.
I don't know what to make of this. Same here. I have no clue. No idea. Algorithms, no idea at all of what hits and what doesn't anymore. You're right. It does seem like people want personal things like family and your, your personal life.
Say, how could we get your show? And I'm like, are you familiar with the YouTube? Do you know how this is working?
Yeah. So, I know. It is so weird. One day we'll figure it out. But anyway, we appreciate all of you listening and participating in the chat and just being very respectful. So thanks, guys. And thank you, Jarrett. We might be back for another live this week. We'll keep you posted on Twitter and on YouTube. And if not, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Lauren.
Happening. You're trying to figure out ultimately what is.
It's still a mystery as to why it took them